Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Startup of the Year podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, the co-founder and co-CEO of Established, the co-founder of Established Ventures, the team behind the Startup of the Year community, and this very podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. I know there's so many podcasts out there to listen to. I appreciate you joining us today. On this episode, we have a special episode focused on some of our alumni. So we got a panel discussion that we hosted back at our summit. And if you missed it, this is your chance to listen to it. If you heard it before, it'll be good to hear it again. So we've got a distinguished set of alumni from our Startup of the Year community joining us. Specifically, we've got David Dvorak. He's the co-founder and president of Kamana, which is a 2019 Startup of the Year Top 100 finalist at our annual awards. He's also his company was a Established Ventures portfolio company until it was actually acquired in 2020. We also have Amy Beckley, who is the founder and CEO of Proov. They were top 100 finalists in our awards, as well as a top finisher in our Startup of the Year at South by Southwest a few years back. And we also have our old friend from Chicago and fellow Cub fan, David Aronson. He's the CEO of and founder of Peanut Butter, which was a top 5 finalist in our Startup of the Year awards in 2016. And last but definitely not least, we've got Garrett Moon. He's the CEO and founder of CoSchedule, and he was also a 2016 top 5 finalist at our Startup of the Year awards. So great group of people. Can't wait to hear what they have to say. And before we jump in, though, into the panel discussion, I want to make sure that I mention that we're always open to looking for additional companies to join our community. We like to help startup founders along the startup journey, and we do that with our programs, resources, and kind of educational opportunities. And everything's positioned to build relationships and push you forward. So if you want to join our community, do so right away. You can just go to soty.link/apply. And if you do so before October 15th, we actually extended our deadline this year for our awards. We're going to do some awards and have our summit. And to be eligible, you need to have your application, or you need to join our community before October 15th. So get those applications in right away, soty.link/apply, and you could be in the running for an opportunity to be named Startup of the Year. All right, now let's switch gears and hear this discussion from our distinguished alumni panel.
For the viewers that don't know, could each of you just please talk a little bit more about your company, when it started, where the idea came from, a little bit about what motivates you, and then also describing the business model and a little bit about your user experience. And David, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. I am the founder of Peanut Butter. We help employers attract, retain, and engage college-educated workers by administering student loan assistance programs. The companies that work with us, organizations like Instacart, Calabrio, Mechanics Bank, and others will choose one of 2 forms of student loan assistance that they want to provide to their team members. Either they give all employees the resources that those employees need to manage their student debt, or they complement those resources with student loan repayment, where the company commits to contributing toward employees' loans. Our clients will typically contribute $50 or $100 per month toward employees' loans, and their contributions over time will help the average worker get out from under her debt in 7 or 8 years instead of 10, and save $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 in principal and interest over the life of their loan. So it makes a meaningful impact for the worker, and for the company, there's a huge payback because employers that offer student loan assistance are able to stand out relative to their competition. In turn, they can hire faster, avoiding the costs of talent acquisition. They can retain talent longer, often reducing materially the costs of lost productivity, rehiring, and retraining. And because of the demographics of who holds student debt, many employers are able to improve gender and cultural diversity and reap the advantages that come along with having a more diverse workforce by offering student loan assistance. My background includes a number of different things, everything from running my family's bakery to building technology applications for a large retailer. But I would say that what I do at Peanut Butter is really sales and management. helping employers design and implement the right student loan assistance programs, and organizing the right team and team members to build our company and serve our clients in the way that they expect.
Thanks, David. How about over to you, Amy?
Yeah, so for all the men in the room, it's the big giant uterus behind me because we are a fertility company. So we help women understand if they're ovulating properly. This is important because it's the #1 cause of infertility. So we're a direct-to-consumer product. The Proov test is sold online on our website, Amazon, Target, FSA store, a whole bunch of different places. But it was invented in my basement because I went through infertility, multiple miscarriages, went through IVF a few times, and told us that, that was my only option, which is very expensive, only to find out that it was a simple hormone imbalance, that if I had a test like Proov, that I could have saved myself that heartache, pain. And so I took it upon myself to invent a product that would help women understand if they're ovulating properly, and if not, to get the help that they need before, pursuing invasive technologies.
Great. And we'll keep it in Colorado and go back to Dave.
Yeah, sure. And very impressed with both of your companies here. I'm learning about them for the first time myself, so that's exciting. So yeah, I'm Dave, one of 3 co-founders at Kamana. At a high level, we offer a twofold product. For nurses and other healthcare professionals, a way to store, track, manage, and share their credentials and compliance data. You can kind of think of it as a universal college application, but they're using it to navigate their career without having to duplicate the paperwork that comes along with kind of managing and sharing all of the various licenses, certifications, medical records, all the things that you have to have as a healthcare professional to step foot into a hospital. The other side is a workflow management platform for healthcare employers, which right now we're explicitly focused on the healthcare staffing world, more exclusively the travel healthcare staffing world. So helping staffing agencies manage the life cycle of the recruitment, onboarding, and compliance process for healthcare professionals. We started this with a good friend of mine, originally. Was hanging out with him while he was on a travel nursing contract. He's a travel nurse, or he was a little too busy nowadays, but was a travel nurse and was on a contract up in Alaska. And we were kind of hanging out up there, and he was kind of going through the process of every few months, he's having to apply and go through the exact same paperwork process with really difficult manual back and forth work with multiple companies, and started looking at it from his angle of how could we introduce a solution to the industry that's going to make life easier for healthcare professionals. And as a result, just kind of learned this, my co-founder John was just one guy dealing with this for himself, but the employers are dealing with these kind of crazy manual tracking and compliance processes for potentially thousands of people at once. So it's really where we came from. All that was into 2018, we got our first piece of our product, our digital wallet for healthcare workers, launched mid 2019. Got our employer platform launched late 2019, and here we are today at 7 employees and a little over 10,000 users and about 50 agencies working on the platform.
Wow. And to my fellow Dakotan, we'll go over to you, Garrett.
Thanks, Jackie. Yes. No snow flying yet up north. Thanks for having me. And CoSchedule, we are a provider of, solutions that help marketing teams get organized. We help marketing teams that are from, single person, 1 or 2 person teams, small businesses, to large enterprise organizations, get their marketing organized and on a single unified marketing calendar. I think a lot of folks who are running startups and founders definitely understand the challenges that come from marketing your business and managing the increasingly growing network of services and places that we need to be talking about managing and promoting our business. So what we really try to do is just give those teams a single place to see all of their marketing, a calendar that helps them plan ahead, in terms of what their marketing efforts need to be, manage their social media, manage the content they're producing on their blog, email marketing, and really give them, in many ways, a visual marketing strategy that most teams are lacking. We know, and our research has shown over the years, and I'm sure many people have heard the stats, that teams that have a written down, documented marketing plan get better results and are better able to drive traffic to their business. So we really try to provide a very simple, easy way to do that, that is user friendly and helps those teams be successful. My background is in marketing. I worked in advertising for 10 years. That's where I met my co-founder. I worked in design, he worked in development. So it was a pretty natural next step for us to jump into the agency world. And doing marketing consulting, we really encountered a lot of clients that were having these issues and these challenges. And that is when we started building our first marketing calendar and strategic planning tool. We launched in 2013. We are a North Dakota-based startup, which is always something that is very unique to us. We continue to be completely North Dakota-based, a couple of offices throughout our state, but we're proud of our part of our heritage here in North Dakota, and yeah.
Thanks, Garrett. I'd love to stick with that thread in terms of where you're based. And this idea around, like, so many of the startup of the year, and this is really our team's emphasis, is on finding startups that are based in markets that are often overlooked or just aren't, on the radar for a lot of the investor networks, and how do we bring those all together? And I think, starting with you, based in North Dakota startup, how does that ecosystem, and we'll take this question to each of you, but Garrett, if you'll start off, just a couple of comments on how the ecosystem shapes your startup and how you've been able to use that ecosystem as something to really nurture your companies. How does where you're based, what's the silver lining in being a Dakota-based startup?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of them that frequently go overlooked. When me and my co-founder originally started CoSchedule and our own marketing agency, we kind of did it because there weren't jobs in our state that we wanted, right? We kind of needed to create jobs that were, pushing more into technology. We were really interested in social media and where that was going. I mean, this was early 2000s, so it's quite a long time ago. Hard to imagine now, but not a lot of that stuff was happening in the field that we were working in. So for us, that really became something where, as long as possible and as much as possible, we want to help create the types of jobs that we want and jobs in technology in our state. So we started very early on with that passion. What we didn't realize at the time was that it was going to become a major advantage for us going forward. There are when you're from a small state or from a rural state or from a state that is actively trying to grow a technology platform as ours is, there's a lot more opportunities in terms of financing. There's direct financing that we get. We have one of the only state-owned banks in North Dakota, which is a very unique benefit. They provided matching funds for us very early on when we were getting going and took on private investors. And I think that type of thing is becoming more and more common in the Midwest in particular. And I think that's something that startups should be looking into and thinking about. I think the other thing is just, you're able to find talent in a way that is very challenging in more populated areas. In North Dakota and in the communities that we have offices in, we can be the best gig in town in many ways. We stand out, and our culture, the work that we do, the global audience that we have a reach to as a startup is very unique to us. So for recruiting, it's really been a major advantage. And we can pick and choose. We are able to bring in people that want to get back to the state, close to family, things like that are more challenging when you're in more populated areas or just areas where there's more startup activity. You're picking and pulling from other places a lot more often than we tend to see.
And how about for you, David Aronson?
Yeah, we were, I think, on the fringe of the radar when the company was founded, based in Chicago. Definitely not the epicenter of where investors look, but not off the radar by any means. And then we moved fully off the radar to Western New York, Buffalo. We maintain an office in Chicago. Company headquarters now in Buffalo. The reason that I chose to relocate the company is a couple of fold. We were selected for an investment from an organization called 43 North, which has really done a nice job building the ecosystem in Western New York. It was a small investment, but it came with access to, it came with some tax incentives to build in the area and access to good junior level talent. So each of those has rung true. It's been a good move relocating the headquarters to Buffalo. For a startup, it really extends the runway. Lower operating structure when it comes to rent and people means that you've got more of an opportunity to build and see the market evolve. So I think we continue to maintain relationships in both Buffalo and Chicago. And, I think there was before the pandemic, growing interest from tech investors and sourcing opportunities outside of Silicon Valley. And from what I can tell, the pandemic has flattened things out even more and created greater access to capital for companies that are not Silicon Valley based. Though I think many of the Silicon Valley investors are still looking for the same thing that they wanted before, which is grow fast and either make something really big or don't make something big. So if that's not your mentality in building your company in Minneapolis or Detroit or Cleveland, if your mentality is to grow steadily and profitably, then you're probably not going to find greater access to capital today than you would have before. That's been my experience.
Well, we'll definitely come back to that topic of fundraising and investors, of course. But I'm curious for you, Dave, how has being based in Denver made a difference for your company? Oh, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Wouldn't be a virtual event without that happening once. Yeah, it's interesting. So we are, from the start and, still we're a fully distributed team. So we have semi been based in Denver because I've gotten so much out of the ecosystem here, and then equally, as much in Richmond, Virginia, very small startup ecosystem, but, very incredible startup ecosystem. So I think we got the advantage right out of the gate where, my co-founder, my two co-founders and I, we were split between, Virginia, Florida, and Denver. So we had the advantage of being in multiple places with support from multiple areas, which is awesome. I would say, speaking to Denver specifically, I moved to Denver when Kamana was a 2-week-old concept. And I would say, virtually nothing about startups. Like my background, I did, help. I was employee 1 at a company in the healthcare space, scaled it to 250, but we were very services oriented. We were not technology oriented. So being in the Denver ecosystem, I would say has everything to do with us making this a reality, just in the sense that I moved here during Denver Startup Week. I attended that. I got a lot of support from people in the ecosystem here to hey, don't talk about it, actually do it. And here are the resources you need to actually achieve that. Yeah. And then in Richmond, where one of my co-founders is based, as well as we went through an accelerator program there in the GAN network called Lighthouse Labs. So I've spent probably most of our company on-site time has been in Richmond. Accelerator program, awesome. Startup ecosystem basically fits into a couple of buildings in Richmond, but incredibly knowledgeable and supportive. And I know we'll get to kind of the capital aspect later, but most of our fundraising has come out of Richmond and other small markets. We haven't taken any money from any big markets. So it's been definitely, I would say, easier to stand out in a small market than it would have been if we were sitting in kind of a top tier market city. But also, comes with its challenges in terms of, capital and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and Amy lives in a community where they've literally written the book about startup ecosystems. So Amy, what's been your experience in Boulder?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to piggyback on what Dave said is Colorado has been phenomenal for us. I started this company bootstrap mode in my basement, and built it to $100,000 revenue company, and then was like, oh, I can't really do this by myself in my basement. I need some more resources. And the state of Colorado was literally the first person to support me. They open you, welcome you, and they have all this resources. And there was a grant for advanced industries that allowed us to attract investors. I 100% agree, is if you're in these big markets on the coast, you can get lost. Whereas being in a smaller area can really be beneficial.
Well, I want to tie that back, and we'll just have you keep going, Amy. The question I think that's come up a lot this week, of course, because we're at Summit, and a lot of what we're doing here is about connecting startups to investors that they might not otherwise be able to reach in their networks. And one of the pieces of advice that we've heard from the investors over and over this week is that they want to know who you are as founders. They want to understand your business, but they really want to invest in people who are authentic. And I think that's such a funny word to think about. What do you think authenticity means for you in terms of your relationship with your investors? Could you share a little bit about what your best relationship with an investor has been, and share any insights on managing those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Our very first investor was an angel investor, and he's put in, money, and then more money, and then more money. So he's always kind of re-upped. And I had a conversation with him about 8 months ago, and it's like, not to be like the bad question, but Paul, why did you invest in this? What was it? And he's like, you're scrappy, you get it. You're so personally involved that there's no way you can fail. It's like, you're ingrained, you have the knowledge, you've done things, non-traditionally, that it's like, if I had to put my money into something, working, it's what you guys are doing because you're so passionate about it. You're so, it's a real thing. It's not like, I just, developed this because I knew I was going to make a bunch of money. It was like a personal passion of mine, which also happened to be a really good product and a really good idea. And if you put those two together, it's like, you tie the passion, the realness with the technology. And, we're a consumer brand. My face is on all these packages. It's my story. We have a huge community of women that support each other. And that kind of personal branding goes a long way. We're not just another, product that's low cost that comes from China without support or anything like that. It's a community of women that are doing things to help other women. And that goes a really, really long way, especially when you're building a consumer brand, which are much harder to scale and to exit, because it's just hard to build a brand.
Well, I think your whole team exudes what you just described too. And so I definitely want to come back and ask you more about your team. But how about over to you, Garrett, in terms of investor relationships and building CoSchedule? What's that look like for your company?
Yeah, I think, as you age as a company, and your investors that came in at the very beginning, they re-upped, just like Amy was talking about, they came in on other rounds, and you added new ones. Those relationships become more and more important. And I think that authenticity word becomes really, really key. And I think that's, what founders, or not what investors are keying in on, is something that founders learn too after they take money, is that things don't always go well. Things rarely go to plan. We put the pitch decks together. We build out our estimates of growth and how we think things are going to go. And sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't go according to plan. sometimes there's major problems that come along the way. I mean, you look at 2020 and you see like just all of the shifting and changing that's happened in different markets and growth and, investors' own portfolios just in the past year. And you realize that there's going to be some hard conversations and there's going to be some hard moments. And I think as investors, they've seen that, they've experienced that. I think sometimes as founders, you're the wide-eyed optimist, and you need to be. But it can be something you overlook as well. And that authenticity and that like relationship, I always think about it as trust. Like there has to be a really strong trust-based relationship. And those things become increasingly important as you go along. And I think, most of the time it's just communication. That's kind of how we've really handled it, is thinking about trying to communicate as often as possible, having good boundaries and good conversations about what the boundaries are in terms of, what we need from investors, what they need from us in order to feel comfortable, and, just having good, authentic conversations.
And David, with Peanut Butter, what's your story? I know you've also bootstrapped ventures in the past. Are you working with investors now, and what's that look like?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit of both from my personal experience with Peanut Butter. We're fortunate to work with some great investors, both funds, private and public, as well as a number of prolific angels that have experience relative to our business. I think I take my job as a manager, as an executive, really seriously, in that it's the investor's job to put in the money and my job to create a return for the investors. So at a minimum, that's what I expect of the investor, is to write a check and to expect a check back. And I work really hard, and my team works really hard to put us in a position to do that. Beyond that, once the check is in, like what makes an awesome investor to work with, I would say anything they do is icing on the cake. We don't expect an active role from our investors, but we have been fortunate to work with some investors that have made a really positive impact on our business. Folks like Howard Tallman in Chicago, who's a multi-time business builder and led 1871 in Chicago to become the #1 tech incubator in the world. Howard has made countless introductions that have led to new clients and partners and team members, and has just been an awesome connector and mentor to me in growing this business. And then others like Steve Case and the team at Revolution, where we were fortunate to receive an investment through the Rise of the Rest. And they not only have provided access to resources for talent acquisition, but also they do a wonderful job of networking between the CEOs and founders of the companies in their portfolio. So they've invited us cordially to, I think, what has been an annual get together with leaders in tech, whether that's B2B or consumer, in different areas, to learn and to network and to grow. And I would say I appreciate and never expected more from any of our investors, but definitely those are two investors that stand out for me.
And Dave, you're certainly in the thick of it right now with Kamana too, and you don't have to say anything bad about those folks at Established Ventures. No, I'm just kidding. I'm curious, how are you protecting that air of authenticity around Kamana as you fundraise right now?
Yeah, for sure. Playing off the concept of authenticity, I've been told by probably 50% of investors I've ever talked to that I'm honest to a fault, which has its ups and downs, but we've always taken the approach of, from the gate, from like the day we decided to start a company, like building that investor network and frequently updating them has been so key to us, like being successful in raising money, so early. So that, I think has been really important. Just, make sure, we establish like a really routine, like communication method with folks. And then just being really authentic in that communication and, continuing that with, existing investors and, people who said no as well. And I think that's been, such a big part of, our like networking and like this startup world is, it's like just even if, you get turned down or, something doesn't work out, it's like so important to keep that relationship key. And I can say the relationship we came into with an investment with Established was actually born out of an original no that led to an introduction to Rich with Established. So I would say just like, we're super authentic, super honest about kind of our numbers and our data. I've had people kind of be like, I can't believe you just sent out an update email that you're down to your last $3,000 in the bank. And that was before we raised our seed round. But I mean, I think that just like that general, like, hey, this is where we're at. And, this is, how hard we're working to make this thing successful, I think has been like just a key driver of like the relationships we built from an investment standpoint. And fortunate to think with the exception of maybe 3 or 4 investors, everything has come out of the city of Richmond or the state of Virginia, which is a little bit kind of different and was challenging because they do want you to grow off of a stable business model. And, you kind of have to play that balance between like, we're going to be really big versus we're going to be, really stable. So like, figuring out that balance was pretty important. And then having the rest of our kind of investment portfolios come out of other small market cities like, Omaha, Nebraska, Denver, Colorado, Jacksonville, Florida. So we've kind of pulled some money from various places.
Well, I want to draw a little bit more on, you've already touched on teams, and like with your team, Amy, there's such deep domain expertise in what you bring into your product. And I'm curious to know more from each of you, and we'll start with you, Amy, about how you've built your team and what kinds of backgrounds or what your philosophy is around staffing up your team in the early stages.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a scientist. I have a PhD in pharmacology. I know I've been through infertility, miscarriage, IVF. I know, the hormones, fertility, like the back of my hand, unfortunately, on a scientific level, on a personal level. And so, I knew I had that capacity, and I created the technology and sold it. We sold it in plastic bags, literally on Amazon. No branding, no anything, no marketing. And the first person that I had to recruit was my co-founder, Ellen, was the marketing side. Is how, pardon my French, but how the hell are we going to build a consumer brand if I don't have a brand? Like, it's just,
Square one.
And so I had to basically lead with the science and the actual test for about a year to build enough traction for somebody of her caliber that was a branding expert to be like, oh yeah, this is a good product. Let me put some branding behind it and really create the product experience. So, it was just me and myself for the first year. And then she came along and she's built brands such as Coors Light, Horizon Milk, Silk. And so she's very in the throes of the consumer branding. And then our third employee was again on the marketing side. So a lot of the social media content, a lot of design content, a lot of blog writing, website design, those kind of things. Then we built the team as we needed. So now we have a regulatory person, we have a supply person, because we have, just so much stuff going on and products. Got an intern, which was awesome. Again, through the state of Colorado. It was awesome. They paid for half of our intern. So that was great. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that I did early on was, I'm a scientist. I went back to school and got my MBA to know just enough about business to know what I did know and what I don't know. Like, for example, I hate doing financial stuff. I just hate it. Like, I'm just not my bag. And so we have a CFO that does that. And it's like, okay, I know that I need this, but I'm not going to do it myself. So, as a founder, we think we need to do it all. But that's not true. We need to know what we're good at and to know what we are not good at, and to be able to fill those gaps to create a team that is, is good. I mean, most investors won't invest in you unless you have at least 2 co-founders, if not 3.
And Dave, what's happening with the development of the team at Kamana?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier that my original, one of my original co-founders, John, was a travel nurse, also a longtime friend of mine. And when him and I decided we wanted to try to make this thing happen, we, neither of us are engineers, and we kind of decided really early on that we don't want to outsource. We want to, find somebody that's going to be a part of this with us, and spent several months looking, and just got super fortunate to meet and go into kind of partnership and equal co-founding relationship, which I think is also important, despite the fact that, we didn't know him. We wanted him to be just as big of a part of this as we are. So got really lucky on the engineering side, and it was just the 3 of us and then another friend of ours that had been working with us from the beginning that, kind of helped build our brand, but really just the 3 of us full time for a long time. And I guess in June of this year, we made our first hire, which was another engineer, and kind of stuck with the let's stay distributed mindset, and got the job word out across the country, and brought him on out of upstate New York. And then just recently we've been back into hiring mode after closing some funding, and we have now brought on a customer success manager, customer support manager, and head of marketing, and they're all over the place as well, between Florida, California, and Pennsylvania. So team is growing, and I think from a team perspective, I mean, we've gotten just like so fortunate with, as we got the company started, and then just amazingly fortunate with these folks that we've brought on in the past few months, and everybody's come in and it's just like hit the ground running. And, is big thing for us is, as we were going through both our, initial start and, hiring, and then now any future hiring is, we want that same like authenticity and everybody that works with the company. And we also want that passion. I mean, there's a huge part about like being a travel nurse, or being a staffing agency, or being a hospital, like dealing with all the stuff we're trying to fix. I mean, it sucks. So like, we want to come in and have people that are like passionate about like, that's a real problem for like a real person, and I want to help solve that real problem for that real person. And we've been fortunate to keep that mentality so far, and that's the goal as we continue to grow.
Garrett, I think you're someone who we're CoSchedule customers, clients now here at Established. So that's been a really fun experience for us in recent months. And we've certainly worked with some people on your team who we really love and who've been super supportive of Established. So I'm curious, what's your philosophy around like what Dave was saying around like the culture, and how you really find the right kind of talent while you're trying to build this company in a place like the Dakotas, where you say it's not easy to find jobs like the ones that you're creating?
Yeah, I think, in terms of culture, our team is a very large team. We're around 50 people right now. And I think one of the biggest lessons we've had in the last few years is just learning how to maintain that culture as our process changes, as the expectations change in terms of how people's job is done, and particularly how you kind of eventually you go from this company where everyone knows everything all the time about everything. And there's a sense of unity that comes from that. And there's a sense of mission. I think, Dave, you kind of hit on that really, really well. Like in the early days, you have to have a belief in order to join a startup. And you have to be somebody who's almost in our case, almost people that could be founders themselves, people that can adapt to a wide variety of skills. They can take on a lot of different things. As we've grown and gotten older, people have specialized more, and we hire more specialized talent, and their deep, passion is in a specific area of work, whether it be engineering or, marketing, or, how we looking at data and statistics, and it's not necessarily the mission that we started CoSchedule with. So I think those types of things are, how do you keep that culture? And how do you keep that sense alive? And for us, that has always come down to just really, as founders, being very committed to, investing in core values in new ways. Sometimes ways that as founders we're not like, oh, that shouldn't be necessary. We don't need to have like, a core value week or a core value month, but you have to, we had to become more intentional about some of those things, because some things that we sort of took for granted as founders that were just sort of in the air in the beginning, we had to be more purposeful in creating those events. So, helping, highlighting things that, that are, we did an example of that as we did something called Vote for Value. And, we really were highlighting people on our team, highlighting certain efforts on our team that were really creating outstanding value for our customers. And, all of that was just a way to reflect back on our core values and help make sure that some of those things that, everyone just used to know because everyone knew everything, get brought up to the top and shared with the team. And we do a lot of that, through still, weekly all hands meetings, and really using those meetings as a tool for celebrating the team and sharing what everybody is doing.
I think, David, over to you. Peanut Butter it's a social impact organization. I mean, student loan debt is a major issue right now. How does that influence the way that you're building a team?
We certainly have an interest in helping people. It feels really nice when you're able to help people. We also quantify the impact that our employer clients can make on their team members in terms of the principal and interest that those individuals are saving and how much faster they're able to get out of debt as a result of their company's help. Our number one goal is to focus on our customers, and our customers are employers. So, it's nice when we have someone who says, I really want to help people get out from under their student loans. But the people that we really look for and that have shown that they can make the biggest impact on our team are people who say, I really want to help employers attract, retain, and engage talent. Because everything we do with student loans is a means to an end. It's a means to make things easy on the company that wants to stand out in the competitive market for talent, that needs to hire nurses, that needs to hire software engineers, that needs to hire store managers, that needs to retain the people who work at their company. And those people might be working remotely. They might, it might be difficult to engage them. They might be returning to work after a pandemic. They might be looking at other job opportunities, but when companies offer meaningful benefits, those people are more likely to stay. So it's nice that we're able to make a social impact. But I would say from our company standpoint, the bread and butter of what we do here at Peanut Butter is on creating an ROI for the employers that buy our software.
Well, we had this discussion a couple of moments ago about how not everything goes to plan. And David, I'll stay with you and ask this question. I'm sure you've messed up a time or two, or have had some, most embarrassing moments in your founder story.
Yeah.
What lesson has taken you the longest to learn as a founder or a startup CEO?
The number one job as a founder and a CEO, I think probably both, is leadership and people development. There can be a million things to do, but when you plan out your week, if you're not planning out time with your people, it's going to be a big miss. You need to think about your job as a manager and as a leader as much as any other job that you might have, any other hat that you might have at the company, whether that's sales or product or engineering or investor relations and finance. It's the people that make it happen.
How about for you, Garrett?
Yeah, I think investing in partners that really make a difference in the work that you do, particularly when you're in a technology-based company. I think early on we could have done a better job of building some of those relationships as a tool that does a lot of integrations. We actually connect to a lot of services. There's a lot of open APIs that you can get access to and utilize. But taking this step more early on and actually even creating a position and hiring someone to come in and nurture some of those partnerships would have saved us some headache of, where we're kind of scrambling to get contacts at certain places, or trying to quickly build relationships to make sure we don't lose access to something, and things that we worked through, but things that I know could have been a lot less hectic and threatening in many ways to the business if we would have invested in those types of relationships early on. And I think that's one thing that can be a pothole or something for a Midwest-based startup, is that you don't always have access to some of those networks, and they don't come very easy. So you have to work a little harder at making sure you build those connections, and probably something we should have been more intentional about earlier on.
And for you, Amy, what are those lessons learned? I mean, you went back and got your MBA, but I'm sure you're learning a lot of lessons as you've built the company.
There's so many lessons. It's like one or two maybe a day, I swear. I guess the biggest lesson is, when you have a really bad day, for whatever happened, to know that, you're doing the best you can, you are doing the right thing, and it will get better. And it oftentimes does. We've had situations where investors were about to, sign on the dotted line, and we did get down to that like $2,000 left in the bank account situation. And then they pull out last minute and we're like, oh my God, now what are we going to do? We're totally sunk. COVID hits and the world shuts down. It's like, oh my God, no one's going to be making babies anymore. We're totally sunk. But there's always going to be challenges. So the biggest lesson is just keep the faith and keep chugging along. Always do the right thing. Never be underhanded or deceptive. It's that whole being real kind of thing. There's a lot of people I've learned, they're just trying to make money, and they'll wheel and deal and steal and do what they want to do to make that happen. But as long as your moral compass is always forward, that's always proven us very well. So.
And Dave.
Yeah, checking if I was on mute. I'll echo what Amy said really fast. And I just like understanding that, there are things that you're not in control of. That's so key to understand. I think any startup founder really early on, it's like, if you let, the bad things ruin your day, you're going to ruin your day every day. So that's definitely not something that you've got to get past as a founder, like really early on, or it is something you have to get past really early on. And I would say, maybe, one key thing I think for me personally is, and this goes with, personal stuff and customers and users, but like kind of learning how to say no. As a kind of a small, young startup, you've only got so much time. You want to please everybody. You want to please your investors and your co-founders and your customers and your users and that partner who thinks that, there's this perfect integration, and like, there's all these, things that people want to do, and there's a lot of great ideas, but you've only got so much time. So I think like being comfortable with saying no, I think has been a big thing for me. And that's even like no to myself of like, like I want to be involved in this project, but like I don't have time. So like, hey man, like just give that thing away and go back and focus on other things, because you can't do it all.
All right. Thanks so much. That was great. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed some of those stories and hopefully took something positive from the discussion there. I certainly did, and enjoyed listening to everyone, and great to hear everyone's doing so well. For those listeners that are following along and want to share the message, please do so with somebody. If you think this is helpful for somebody else, we believe in sharing and helping spread the message, and sharing is caring. So spread the love here and help somebody out. Speaking of sharing, I wanted to mention Open Grants, because I think it's something our listeners may find interesting. There's some interesting services. So Open Grants platform is a search engine and expert marketplace that unlocks non-dilutive U.S. funding for organizations around the world. So you can sign up for free and search the various grants. If you go to www.opengrants.io/established, And in doing so, you might find something that could empower your startup, your nonprofit, your foundation. It should be all in there, and lots of different ways to get funded these days, and not just the traditional friends and family, angel, or venture methods. So check it out. It's www.opengrants.io/established. Well, that's it for this episode. And remember, if you're out there and you've got an idea and you want to get it going, today is the best day to start up, not tomorrow, not the next day. Get it going, iterate, and in doing so, I encourage you to join our community. We really are here to help, and we want to offer support, expert advice, resources, mentorship, some events, a little bit of fun, and we hope that it helps you elevate your startup and continue to keep going. So to join us, you can join us anytime, as I mentioned earlier. Just go to soty.link, LINK, /apply. So soty.link /apply, or just type in startupoftheyear.com. All right, until next time, I'm Frank Gruber signing off. Thanks again for listening. Wishing you the best of luck and future success in all of your ventures.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode soon.